A very good morning, Minister Josephine Teo, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. A warm welcome to the launch of Tech for Good Institute. My name is Jacqueline Chow and I'm delighted to be your MC this morning. To our audience joining us online, hello. Good morning to all of you. Thank you for dialing in. I hope you've made yourselves comfortable at home with a beverage on hand. Well, first we'd like to say thank you to each and everyone, in person and online, for taking the time out from your busy schedule to join us here this morning. Your presence is very much appreciated. Now, I do have a couple of important rules, so please allow me to share them. First, do keep your mask on at all times. Of course, if you'd like to take a sip of water, coffee, in the morning, please feel free to remove your mask to do so. Do note that food is not allowed to be consumed in this auditorium. Second, do keep a safe 1 meter distance apart from each other. And lastly, this venue has kindly provided hand sanitizers for every one of you to use. You can find it in various corners of this building, so please feel free to use the hand sanitizers throughout the event. We'd like to thank you in advance for helping us to keep the environment and everyone safe. So today, we are here to launch the Tech for Good Institute. Now, it is a think tank set up to nurture the positive impact of technology with a Southeast Asia development focus. To kick off our event this morning, it is my pleasure to invite on stage Grab co-founder Ms. Tan Hui Ling. Ms. Tan, please.
So good morning, everyone. Minister, Mr. Liu, Professor Lim, and dear guests, thank you for joining us today, both in person in Singapore, as well as online as well. We really appreciate your time to grace us in this event. So, COVID-19 continues to make a lasting impact around the world. This pandemic was initially thought to be the great equalizer, but is now proven to be the exact opposite. The virus is ushering in the greatest rise in economic inequality in decades. And we see this very acutely in our home here in Southeast Asia. In fact, a 2020 World Bank report predicted that the sharp economic contractions that we're now seeing will produce a wave of new COVID poor across the region. And for Grab, a large part of the work over the last year for us has been centered on reversing this rise in economic inequality. As importantly as ensuring our business remains on a firm footing, was our focus on ensuring that our ecosystem and the communities that we serve continue to operate in a safe and healthy way. When businesses closed and jobs were lost, many individuals turned to the informal economy for their incomes. We also saw an accelerated push towards digitized businesses and explosive demand for new businesses, including food and grocery deliveries, as well as cashless digital payments. At Grab, we invested energy into our platform with technology and collaborated with governments and worked across the industry to run joint initiatives to allow our driver partners, merchants, and social sellers to digitize their businesses and leverage our platforms. The best part of all of this is that we were not alone. Many other technology companies pursued similar approaches of collaboration and doubled down on innovating to keep opportunities open for those affected in the region. This was quite possibly the clearest demonstration of the profound impact that technology can have in recent memory. It also confronted us with whether the reality of technology could be harnessed for good or not, especially in times of crisis? Could we as technology stakeholders come through to those who depended on us? If there's one thing we do know, however, it's that this pandemic will not be our last. And there's an important role that technology can play to radically improve on our resilience as nations in the region to navigate future challenges. So building on this resilience, however, will likely come hand in hand with uncomfortable periods of adjustment. For example, some 100 years ago, elevators used to require individuals to operate the buttons and controls inside the elevators because the technology was so new and untrusted then. But after a period of time, and after a large effort to educate the public that these elevators could actually be operated safely without this individual, the equilibrium shifted. And today, internet technology is bringing about similar changes. Our communities will need to wrestle with these changes to determine what is the new equilibrium we should be in. And part of that process requires in-depth conversations and dialogues to help align on the way forward, including on issues related to digital inclusion and the welfare of our platform workers. So today, Southeast Asia is at the cusp of change towards a digital platform economy. In 2020, e-commerce made up 8% of total retail sales in the region. Compare this to 17% in the US and 27% in China. Southeast Asia has also made tremendous strides to improve access to and affordability of mobile internet. With over 400 million internet users in Southeast Asia, 6 in 2020, this is up from 122 million, I can pronounce, in 2010. So, despite this growth, 30% of Southeast Asia's 6, the population is not yet online. And there remains a large gap between urban centers and more rural areas. There is tremendous growth for further growth and opportunities throughout the platform economy in Southeast Asia. And while this pandemic has definitely accelerated digital participation, we are just at the beginning. And we believe that this is the right time for the region to have a dialogue and debate and determine what this new equilibrium, our own equilibrium, should be. So, this is why today I am very excited to announce that we are founding the Tech for Good Institute, a nonprofit think tank, to encourage and enrich these dialogues on social, economic, and policy trends accelerated by the platform economy. This is our way of bringing together a variety of stakeholders from the public and private sectors to help define this new equilibrium for the region. The Institute will serve as a platform to catalyze research and collaboration to advance this agenda. And we are starting this journey today with the publication of the Institute's inaugural report on the platform economy, which many industry and public stakeholders have also helped contribute to. We hope that this will catalyze many more collaborations with the Institute. And I would really like to just end today by expressing our deepest gratitude to all of you who have helped us reach today's milestone. We are looking forward to many more steps ahead on this journey with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Tan, for the wonderful speech. We love this idea of creating our own new equilibrium with the people of Southeast Asia in mind. Joining us virtually today as well, we have Professor Klaus Schwab, founder and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum. He has recorded a video message for all of us here today. Let's take a look.
Anthony and Ling, it's such a great pleasure to be together with you to celebrate a big event in the development and the history of GRAP. I had the opportunity to watch your rise since 2012, and I want to thank you for the great cooperation we have established with your very dynamic organization. Of course, it's an honor to address you all here on the occasion of the launch of the Tech for Good Institute. Since you are here, either in Singapore or in New York, you must also be worried about the growing discontent and an increasingly heated technology policy debate, as I am. I have been a firm believer that the fourth industrial revolution, for which I coined actually the expression, is a chance for humanity to rethink itself and rebuild a fairer and more inclusive and more advanced society. Already, technology and digital tools play a central role in transforming the way we work and we live. They are unlocking new business models, as GRAB has demonstrated, and new opportunities for workers and entrepreneurs. They provide much more powerful intelligence for decision-making, and they are empowering those who previously did not have a voice. However, we don't see many of those promises fully materializing yet. And what's worse, despite creating value, we see technology also increasing inequality. That is particularly because many don't fully understand technology. The sheer speed and complexity of technological development poses a serious challenge to governments and, of course, to companies and to society at large. There are two main issues of concern, in my opinion. On the one hand, some big tech firms, platform companies, have been operating in a quasi-unregulated environment that has led to a situation that is hard to resolve without causing economic and societal losses, as some companies have become systemically large. The big tech crackdown, as some people would call it, happening in the world's two largest economies is an illustration of this difficult balancing act. On the other hand, preventive legislation of digital matters is almost destined to slow the innovation and stop societal dividends from occurring. We see more governments emerging with the desire to proactively regulate digital platforms and companies before it's too late, as they say. But that also creates a risk for those economies to fall behind as they stifle innovative firms. As a result, one might wonder whether we face a hard choice between fostering big tech and their innovation on the one hand, and ensuring public safety and well-being on the other. But I believe there is a third way. When it comes to technology and digital platforms, public-private cooperation, the World Economic Forum stands for, is a way to pursue both. It allows business to be heard and governments to keep pace with technology developments and provide timely regulation and support that the economy might need. Here, at the World Economic Forum, we have been advocating for public-private collaboration for more than 50 years. Now more than ever, with technology holding so much potential to change our lives to the better, we need to come together to unlock it. Let me give you an example. 6 years ago, we have created a network of the Centers for the fourth industrial revolution. Hosted and recognized by the governments, they have already provided a platform for agile cooperation, for joint work with the private sector leaders on more than a dozen technology-related projects, frameworks, and toolkits across 5 continents. The potential of such a collaboration is immense. Every project tested and implemented in one country provides data points about its efficiency. This empowers any other government in the world to make an educated decision about replicating or adjusting the regulation based on the results they know. This would not have been possible without having a dedicated global platform where government and business and also civil society can come together. Today, I welcome the establishment of the Tech for Good Institute in Singapore. Here, companies, governments, and society leaders can jointly work on future-proof solutions and approaches that have the potential to make the lives of millions of people in Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, and Thailand better. Here, Southeast Asian nations have a chance to avoid scenarios played elsewhere, negative scenarios played elsewhere, and build a healthy and prosperous digital economy, building also on the specific national strengths and needs. It is hard to overestimate the importance of starting the operation of the Tech for Good Institute today. I'm wishing the Institute's team and GRAB a lot of success, and I'm looking forward to working together on this important agenda in the future.
Thank you very much, Professor Klaus Schwab, for that message articulating the importance of how companies, governments, and society leaders can come together working for the greater good for a more inclusive growth in Southeast Asia. This morning, as well, we are delighted to have with us, giving the opening remarks, Minister for Communications and Information, Mrs. Josephine Teo. Minister, may I please invite you on stage?
I think you can hear me. Ms. Tan Hui Ling, colleagues and friends, thank you very much for inviting me to join you at the launch of GRAB's Tech for Good Institute. In the last few years, several tech unicorns have emerged that are based in Singapore, and they include consumer internet company Sea, financial services platform NIAM, and most recently, online classified marketplace Carousel. Apart from their astonishing commercial success, we in the government are very happy that they are contributing in other ways. Sea, for example, is working with the IMDA to hire and train 500 Singaporeans under the Tech Skills Accelerator program. NIAM has situated Bolt in Singapore, and Bolt is its global R&D hub to boost innovations in fintech. And to encourage sustainable living, Carousel is supporting the Ministries of Sustainability and Environment's Climate Action Week through its hashtag Trash to Treasure initiative. It is significant that successful homegrown enterprises see your impact in more than economic terms. Particularly in the digital domain, Singapore-based businesses have the opportunity to punch above your weight, like companies have shown. Along with your growing economic influence internationally, it is right and good that you consider your social impact. Such a motivation for the Tech for Good Institute is commendable and to be further encouraged. As a global company, Grab's footprint extends well beyond Singapore. But even then, our experiences here with digital developments can be instructive, and hopefully they can serve as pathfinders for the Institute's research initiatives and help you make a bigger impact worldwide. So in the spirit of learning and sharing, let me outline just 2 areas. The first is on digital inclusion, which Hui Leng also talked about. The author of 2001: A Space Odyssey, Arthur C. Clarke, had said that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. I see Hui Leng nodding away. She's responsible for some of the magic that I experienced just yesterday. My son's good friend, recently located to London, ordered a treat of Korean fried chicken to be delivered to our home to thank our family for the friendship and support. And of course, it was delivered by GrabFood. Now, such magic is commonplace, but life is not similarly magical for the 3.8 billion people around the world who do not yet even have an internet connection. Hui Leng talked about the 30% in Southeast Asia. Worldwide, it's 3.8 billion people. Digital inclusion is not yet a reality for everyone. In Singapore, we have made serious efforts to bridge the digital divide. For example, subsidized broadband through our Home Access program has helped to raise broadband penetration up from 90% in 2017 to about 98% currently. Last year, we set up the SG Digital Office, and since then, its digital ambassadors have trained more than 100,000 seniors and familiarized them with what we call digital acts of daily living. For example, cashless payments, accessing e-newspapers from our public libraries, and interacting with their families online. Our well-loved hawkers are not forgotten either. We started an Alliance for Action on online ordering for hawkers, of which Grab is a very active member. And in a few short months, the Alliance has engaged more than 5,500 stallholders in this very difficult time and helped more of them to participate in online ordering. Before we started, about 1/3 of the hawkers participated in online ordering. Now we've gotten to about half. And clearly there's room for us to grow further. Not so long ago, our Prime Minister spoke of our concerns about the platform workers, delivery workers in particular, who get most of their work through online platforms. They are, for all intents and purposes, just like employees, but they lack the basic protections like workplace injury compensation, union representation, and employer CPF. In time to come, we worry that they will find it harder to afford housing, healthcare, and eventually retirement. To be truly inclusive, we must address these issues to give these workers more secure futures. Therefore, the MOM is studying the matter and will take a similarly consultative approach in arriving at solutions, in the same way that Professor Klaus Schwab talked about the public-private partnership, so needed to untangle and address the complex issues that we face in digital developments. Let me now turn to digital security. As more people become digitally connected, we must acknowledge the risks. Just like the rest of the world, the number of online scams and ransomware incidents in Singapore has risen. These have real-world impact. Online scams can cause serious financial harm. Ransomware attacks such as those in Ireland, New Zealand, in Germany, impact even healthcare services. And they can cause serious physical harms. For example, when affected IT systems mean that surgeries have to be postponed or certain services being undelivered at all. Weaknesses in data protection, if not overcome, could also eventually impede legitimate uses, such as for research and business improvement. Here again, we have introduced new measures to counter the risks. We launched the Safer Cyberspace Master Plan last October. It is a blueprint for the creation of safer and more secure cyberspace in Singapore, aimed at raising the general level of cyber hygiene for individual users, communities, enterprises, and organizations. We are also increasing cybercrime awareness in the private sector. The Singapore Police Force has set up the Alliance of Public-Private Cybercrime Stakeholders to engage tech companies like yourselves, platforms, and banks to combat cybercrime. We've also taken proactive steps to safeguard our critical information infrastructure by raising their cybersecurity posture in view of the growing threats and building on the provisions in the Cybersecurity Act of 2018. Last year, we also amended our Personal Data Protection Act to strengthen safeguards while making legitimate users clearer and easier for businesses. We are also supporting SMEs with a free business intelligence tool so they can use the data safely and securely without worrying about whether they have flouted the PDPA rules. But it is a long road ahead to full digital inclusion and assured digital security. We are determined to keep up these efforts in Singapore and support your efforts elsewhere in the world. In this context, what does Grab's setting up of the Tech for Good Institute mean? I see it potentially as significant in two ways. First, as a public commitment for the company to do good as much as to do well. And second, as an inspiration to other Singapore-based businesses to achieve greater global impact. In the same way, as a nation, Singapore is keen to play our part to shape the global digital commons and secure sustainable digital developments. For example, Singapore champions practical mechanisms for data sharing, such as the ASEAN Data Management Framework and the ASEAN Model Contractual Clauses for cross-border data flows. Singapore also participates in the APEC Cross-Border Privacy Rules system, which allows certified organizations to seamlessly exchange personal data. These initiatives help regional businesses reach wider audiences and gain real benefits from digital trade. We welcome the United Nations Secretary General's proposal for a global digital compact and to identify a common set of digital development goals that will guide humanity on the common path forward. Singapore also now chairs the UN Open-Ended Working Group on Cybersecurity. This week, we are holding the 6th Singapore International Cyber Week, which has grown to be a key forum, attracting policymakers, leading industry players, and thought leaders. Singapore is also a founding member of the multi-stakeholder Global Partnership for artificial intelligence, where our experts actively contribute. We were the first in Asia to develop a model AI governance framework. And this is to provide practical guidelines to companies on how to deploy AI responsibly. There are ongoing sectoral adaptations of this framework. At the World Economic Forum, both my ministry and Grab contribute to the multi-stakeholder Edison Alliance, which aims to ensure that every person can affordably participate in the digital economy. These examples I have cited reflect the urgent need for efforts from multiple stakeholders. This is because the challenges in the digital domain are inherently complex and need close partnerships between governments, enterprises, consumers, and citizens across national boundaries. They also demonstrate how Singapore can contribute to building the wider digital ecosystem in the same way Grab seeks to through your setting up of the Institute. Since I talked about magic earlier, let me end with another view about it. This time it comes from Roald Dahl, a much-loved author of children's books. And he said that those who don't believe in magic will never find it. And whatever the challenges technology brings, it can also be a force for good. Not only can we share this belief, we must find every opportunity to make it a reality. The Institute represents your efforts to do so. And I look forward to working with you as well as other arms of the government, enterprises, and community partners to make tech for good real for everyone. Thank you once again for inviting me.
Thank you very much, Minister Teo. May I please invite you up front here to remain on stage for the launch? This one, exactly. X marks the spot. May I also please invite on stage for the launch Grab co-founder, Ms. Han Hui Ling, Tech for Good Institute Advisory Board member, Professor Lim Xiong Guan, Tech for Good Institute Executive Director Dexinate, Dr. Ming Tan, Chief Executive IMDA, Mr. Liu Chuan Hong. Minister Teo and Ms. Tan, at the count of 3, I'll invite you to press the launch button. I'm going to invite everyone to join in the countdown, and for those of you joining us at home as well, please do join in. And in 3, 2, 1. Congratulations! The Tech for Good Institute is now officially launched. May I please invite Minister and our guests to look forward. Stay at your spot. We're going to look forward, yes, to take a photo to commemorate this moment. Just hold on 1 second as our photographer adjusts the lighting. I would say big smiles, but I would say big smiles with your eyes. And we'll do one photo without mask as well. So if you could all please remove your mask. Let's give you some time to put it in the pocket. And once again, if you could please look forward. Big smiles this time. Thank you very much. Thank you. Please put your mask back on. Once again, thank you, Minister Josephine Teo, Ms. Tan, Prof. Lim, Dr. Min Tan, and Mr. Liu for joining us for this launch. I invite you to take your seats. Thank you. And of course, thank you everyone in person as well as online for joining us today. Now, one of the purpose of the Tech for Good Institute is to encourage and enrich action-oriented research and dialogue on socio-economic policy trends accelerated by the digital economy in the region. In the spirit of enriching, we are absolutely delighted to have Mr. Florian Hope, partner and head of Asia Pacific Digital Practice at Bain & Company, to do a short presentation for us today about the platform economy, Southeast Asia's digital growth catalyst. Mr. Hope, please.
Great. Thanks for having me. It is my pleasure today to shed a little bit of light on the magic behind the scenes and introduce our report, The Platform Economy. Whoop, one slide too far. The Platform Economy, Southeast Asia's Digital Growth Catalyst. Now, let me first introduce the subject of the report, which are really online to offline platforms. They're unique in that they require a different level of physical and digital infrastructure to function, and generally are more geographically intertwined than pure digital platforms. They've been pivotal to Southeast Asia's digital development and innovation over the last years, and have actually changed the nature of many industries out here and many lives in the region. But they've also come with a number of challenges for policymakers in the region, while they brought these benefits. The purpose of this report is to give an introduction to the topic and facilitate further discussion. Let me start by saying that the platform economy has been making great strides in Southeast Asia. The foundations are set. Both on the consumer side, on the merchant and SME side, there's been broad adoption of these platforms. And this adoption has been very positive. So from our research, we find that most agree on the consumer side that platforms had a very positive influence on their lives. They've got very high net promoter score. And on the SME side, they've brought significant benefits and are critical to success for many of our merchants and SMEs. But they're still at the early stages of their growth. There's a lot more to unlock and opportunity. We heard earlier on the e-commerce, the online penetration of retail sales in Southeast Asia. And actually only 1 in 4 consumers in Southeast Asia today use 3 or more O2O services. So most use is limited still to relatively narrow use cases. Now, online to offline platforms have really been critical to the development of Southeast Asia's digital economy, and that is across a far-reaching range of sectors, all the way from travel, transport, to food, e-commerce, but also enabling layers like logistics and increasingly things like education and healthcare. While they've done this, they've really changed the nature of the economy out here. And a lot of this is, in some ways, the role that traditionally has been with conglomerates in emerging markets, where they overcome critical infrastructure gaps as they develop, put the power plant next to the factory to help grow the business. And similarly, the digital platforms out here, and the O2O platforms in particular, have helped overcome these digital physical infrastructure challenges and helped us on the education journey for both consumers and SMEs, which hasn't always been straightforward. That was in particular critical over the last 18, now going on 20 months during this period of the pandemic. On the consumer side, a lot more adoption of these platforms and actually has helped keep the doors open for many consumers to the rest of the world. Things like, well, Korean fried chicken delivery, but also other examples of how consumers stayed connected through the world with O2O platforms. On the SME side and more broadly in the employment sector, the way platforms helped generate employment and helped the workforce pivot in this period. Grab alone created about 200,000 jobs in the period of COVID-19. And on the government side, where the platforms have been a critical tool to reach out to citizens, provide benefits, and ensure they weather this period well. Now, a lot more good can come from this. If you look at the areas of benefits that we see platforms bringing, on the consumer side, it's really been around enriching people's lives. 8 in 10 consumers have more options using platforms. It's about providing livelihoods, it's opening up employment opportunities. On the SME side, it's really digitalizing SMEs. It's going out to the market, it's reaching more customers than they could historically do. And then on the infrastructure side, it's been a critical enabler for both the digital infrastructure, so things like eKYC, getting access to customers, and logistics infrastructure, reaching much deeper into markets than, especially in emerging markets, than historical postal networks would have done. And then last but not least, they've really also created a flywheel of growth for the tech economy in Southeast Asia. There's now more than 1,000 startups in Southeast Asia that can attribute their roots to founders who started out at the first generation platforms in Southeast Asia. But obviously the journey isn't done. More can be done to unlock the potential. We created a simple and easy to measure index, the New Economy Progress Index, to help act as a reference point on how far Southeast Asia has come on digital platform development. A few dimensions to this that stand out. One, the digital and physical infrastructure. So both are critical for success, and continued improvement, in particular in the physical infrastructure, as the platforms start to have an impact in non-urban areas, continues to be critical. And then the element of merchants, SMEs, and consumers, where it's not only around breadth, around reaching many, but also about depth, around depth of engagement and activity level. And last but not least, an important health parameter to this, ensuring that merchants, SMEs, and consumers continue to have a positive view of platforms, that they contribute positively to their lives. Now, doing this in a Southeast Asia context is not straightforward. I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but Southeast Asia is truly unique. And that's uniqueness on many lenses. Uniqueness geographically. It's a region of islands. It is culturally very different in different countries. Regulatory regimes are very different across the region. It's unique in consumer behaviors. It's uniquely social, it's uniquely mobile first, which many of the other platform players will tell you as well. And it is really only at the early stage of its growth potential. So we see the internet economy in the region at least triple until 25, and with significant potential beyond that. So as Southeast Asia thinks around creating its own playbook for the platform economy, it's important to think around balancing the scales. We all have heard a number of the potential issues that may occur with platform growth. Platforms benefit from scale. Platforms benefit from being bigger and aggregating consumer demand. So ensuring a fair and level playing field and access for competitors, access for smaller players remains important. Consumer protection is critical. We just heard examples of the topics of fraud and scam, which actually have been one of the major concerns in our research as well. Data privacy is another one, which is a big topic in developed economies and increasingly becoming important in Southeast Asia. The future of work. How do we protect workers on these platforms? How do we ensure they're fairly treated? And managing the digital divide. This is not yet a platform economy for everyone. There's a lot of people which are still left behind, which are still figuring out how to engage in this platform economy. While managing these issues, policymakers have to also ensure that they keep realizing the benefits that platforms can bring. Continued investments in infrastructure, helping overcoming the digital and physical infrastructure challenges Southeast Asia still has. Reaching the underserved, going to hard-to-reach rural areas where network effects can actually make this more accessible for platforms. Driving affordability and wider options for consumers, helping consumers get that reach that they would want. And last but not least, improving livelihoods and creating new flexible employment models that suit this generation and this age, and that help work for various segments of the population. Now, to get that right, I want to leave you with 4 simple messages. The report goes in much more depth here. 1, age-old stakeholder collaboration. This doesn't do itself. Talking, figuring out how platforms function, where and how platforms can contribute is going to be critical to the success of the platform economy. 2, iterative and adaptive. And that's an important one. It's a uniquely complex regulatory challenge to deal with platforms. The difference could be between different countries in a region, different regions in a country, can be between different sectors in the economy. Some may require much more stringent regulations. Some may actually benefit from a sandbox approach to get this started, and may differ quite a bit across ASEAN. So it's not an easy regulatory environment. 3, responsible and sustainable. And that really comes back to the platforms. Platforms have to commit to be accountable, to follow good governance mechanisms, and to engage proactively in building out the platform economy for Southeast Asia. And then 4, again, an age-old topic in ASEAN, regional coordination. This does not work one country at a time. Even the biggest countries in ASEAN are not big enough to play on a global stage. And working together, they can create a landscape that can really build homegrown platforms that can compete on a global stage and make an impact far beyond ASEAN's shores. Thank you. The platform economy, Southeast Asia's digital growth catalyst.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hope, for your sharing, giving us an overview of the platform economy, how are they transforming the digital landscape for us in Southeast Asia, as well as the potential that continues to exist. We'll now take a short 3 minutes intermission. Great time for you to stretch if you're back home in person as well. Do join us back here. We will be kicking off the second half of our program with a panel discussion titled Unlocking the Platform Economy's Promise for Inclusive Growth. So let's take a short break right now. We'll see you soon. Welcome back. For the second half of our program, we do have a panel discussion titled Unlocking the Platform Economy's Promise for Inclusive Growth. Our panelists this morning will provide us with the depth and breadth of insights on this topic. Please allow me to introduce them. Senior Advisor for International Public Policy and Government Affairs at N Group, Ms. Carrie Xuan. Loh Tak Kwong Distinguished Professor at the Business School and Professor of Finance, Economics and Real Estate at the National University of Singapore, Professor Sumit Agarwal. Joining us from across the globe, we can see their faces on our screen. We have MasterCard Chief Administrative Officer, Mr. Timothy Murphy. Vice President of ASEAN Development Bank, Dr. Bambang Susantono. And today's panel discussion will be moderated by CEO and publisher at Tech for Impact Asia, Mr. Timur Nabili. I'll hand over the time to you.
Thank you very much indeed. Good morning, panel. Good morning, everybody here. Very nice to see you. Thanks for being with us today and staying around. We're going to have a quick discussion about the issues as mentioned and about the Tech for Impact Institute. And I'd just like to say, the Tech for Good Institute, rather. I'd just like to say I'm very appreciative of being here, and thank you to Grab for inviting me to host this conversation because, as mentioned, a couple of years ago I began a platform in association with the Asian Development Bank called Tech for Impact, which is very similar. In fact, even our branding colors are very similar. And the agenda of driving impact and good activity in the Asian context is really something that is beginning to take hold and is of vital importance, I think. And I'm really looking forward to what Grab and the Tech for Good Institute are going to do in this part of the world, because a locally based think tank with locally based priorities around the ideas of doing good and creating impact in the digital economy, I think is an absolute necessity. There is no better time than now for making this happen. On Tech for Impact, we cover stories around these issues. I do lots of dialogue and conversations with people around these issues. So I'm, again, very happy that Grab are doing this, and I look forward to collaborating with them on this. So this morning, we're going to talk about some of the issues that have been brought up by Klaus Schwab, by Minister Teo, by Tan Hui Ling, very quickly address the relevant parts of this agenda. And I want to start, if I can, by taking it from a macro perspective to a micro perspective. Let's talk just for a moment about the platform economy in an Asian context. And to do that, Vice President Bambang Susantono of the Asian Development Bank, let me come to you because you operate across the entire region, not just the 6 markets in ASEAN here. Tell us a little bit about the challenges of digitalization, of platform economics, and all the elements that go into that that you think are relevant to this conversation.
Thank you, Timur, and a very good day to all of you from Manila, the Philippines. Let me start by congratulating the FGI launch. It is a very important and also commendable initiative. So you posed very important questions, my friends, Timur. And as we remember, before the pandemic came, most of us were preparing ourselves to have the new normal, where digitalizations, automations, the era of AI, IoT, and IR 4.0, for example, will start to dominate our daily life. We also witnessed during the pandemic, because of the physical distancing and so many other things associated with the health requirement, the digitalization and the advancement of technology are accelerating. In 2019, one of our study on the digital platform shows that the B2C, or business to consumer revenues, raised about $1.8 trillion in Asia. This is equivalent to about 6% of regional GDP. And from 2020 to 2025, we project that the digital transformation across all industry is expected to yield about $1.7 trillion in additional output annually, creating 65 million new jobs each year. So digital platforms have played and will play an important role in driving a country's economic growth in Asia. It creates the depth of space and time constraint because digital platform is a new marketplace where buyers and sellers can interact real time, anywhere, anytime, with anybody who has an access. And as countries consider their post-COVID-19 recovery plans, the disease may become endemic, and restriction on in-person interactions may also continue. By facilitating business online, the digital platform have the potential to enable economies to recover more quickly, as has been shown by many studies. And looking at the trend, I believe that this digital economy will be wider and also deeper in our society, especially in the Asia and South Asia context. But let me add, Timur, 4 other important points here. Again, with the context of Asia and especially South Asia, because ADB is operating in Asia and the Pacific. First, digital connectivity needs reliable digital infrastructure. Good digital infrastructure that enables accessible and affordable internet is necessary to ensure that everyone can participate in the digital economy and that no one left behind. Let me emphasize the word affordable in addition to the words available and accessible of digital connectivity. I usually term this one as the 3A, available, accessible, and also affordable. Second, besides the digital or ICT infrastructure, developing the analog infrastructure, such as roads and ports, is also very important. Good purchase on digital platforms still need to be delivered efficiently. So a smooth and efficient transport, logistic, and supply chain infrastructure remains a necessity for the development. Third, the divide between the platform user and non-user may increase inequality and cause the digital gap to widen. As the world begins to recover, we must ensure that we don't fall into a K-shaped recovery, where stimulus and new opportunities benefit some, but the poor, the vulnerable, marginalized society, and unconnected suffer. So as opposed to the more common V or U-shaped recoveries, the K represent a possibility widening inequality. It shows a post-pandemic recovery splitting into directions. The upward trajectory represents those who are better off because they have direct access to finance, digital technology, and skills, and the downward trajectory represents those that get left out. And fourth, finally, it is very important to have a good institutional framework and governance to build and maintain trust in digital transactions. We also heard from the ministers and others who also spoke before us. This is because buyers and sellers may not have in-person interactions. So regulation on e-payments, after-sale services, confidentiality of private data are necessary to instill confidence in e-transactions. I pause here, Timur, back to you.
Dr. Bambam, thank you very much indeed for that broader perspective. And I think it's important to have that regional perspective before we get to the specifics of this, because although the Tech for Good Institute is focusing on 6 of the ASEAN nations, in the spirit of collaboration and knowledge sharing and the online commons, I think that the rest of developing Asia is going to be able to benefit significantly from the work that this institute does and from the experiences of the regional and local activities. So in that vein, Carrie, I want to come to you. If you could just also add to that general perception, give us your sense of the challenges facing platform economies, and has obviously been dealing with them in a specific China context, but the scale and the problems and the activities and the opportunities in that context. Please just give us your experiences and thoughts on that.
Sure. First of all, congratulations to the launch of Tech for Good Institute. I'm very honored to be part of this panel. So let me just give a little bit of background, of the 17 years of journey where Alipay in Antwerp came from. So we started from a very humble origin, trying to really just solve a small pain point to connect the buyer to the seller on something relatively innovative back then, 17 years ago, around e-commerce platform. So we would hold the money on behalf of the buyer. When they receive the goods, then we will dispatch the funds to sellers upon their satisfaction. So simple things like that. So really consumer-oriented, trying to make one small incremental steps along their user journey along the way is what defined our business success and growth. So we're very fortunate that we are able to provide that product offerings, and the merchants and consumers are happy, and therefore they continue help contribute to our transformation and drive for change. Similarly, about 2014, when Chinese users, they are trying to travel the world, to see the world, we got questions, how can we use Alipay outside of China in the same way? So basically, we were looking into how to bring the China wallet usage outside of China, by building, our merchant acceptance, one country, one region by region. I still remember back then, our colleague in Europe, they tried to knock on the door of Printemps, a very prestigious shopping mall. And then they have questions, what is Alibaba? What is Alipay? What is mobile payment? Is it safe? So, we definitely came from a very long journey. But along the way, we listen, we talk to merchants, we try to understand, what is their pain point? How can we use technology to help them digitalize their business model? And then we were really able to get a wide range of support from our merchant acceptance. And then, it's interesting. Everything seems relatively organic because from there, then we see, we were able to provide effective marketing solutions for the Chinese users. So the merchants can really reach the target segment of the customer base that they want. Then can we bring this experience to other users outside of China as well? So that's when we were looking into the region, looking into suitable partners which share the long-term strategic vision, how to enhance cross-border trade experience. And then, one step at a time, and then we identify the key partners, and then we invest minority stakes in them. We don't want to control them because we believe they do the job better than us. As the Bain reports show, there are many different cultures and acceptance behavior in the region. So we partners with these wallet providers, and then actually what we did is we provide our knowledge and our technology to help jumpstart their operation from our years of experience. So they don't need to go through the whole journey and reinvent the wheel again. So we believe, in this journey, we are actually a facilitator. We are the back-end engine, help them to support them, give them guidelines, give them experience, and then they make the decision, how to customize the product offering on the ground. So now, we are at this juncture where, we are also looking into how to bring, more businesses to the local merchants, to bring the consumers globally. And then we have launched Alipay Plus solution, where we'll facilitate cross-border trade, bring all these mobile payment users across border for online and offline acceptance. So this 17 years of journey is not easy, I must admit, because I've been in it for at least 10 years of that. But then, everything is also coming just from a consumer's perspective. I'm sure similar to Grab, right? They're looking into what consumers need, how to serve them better. So this is our philosophy, and then what drives true innovation. And I think there are two critical elements in this learning. One is being really open to work with all stakeholders, work with banks, work with merchants, work with governments in this journey, and also to innovate, right? Think about the pain points and how do we use technology to increase their digital capacity to do more, even for the small, medium merchants, for the F&B, for the hawker center, moms and pops, how to help them use technology so they can plan their stock takes better, they can optimize their operational efficiency in a much more cost-effective manner. So I believe we shouldn't stop here. This journey is very long. We should definitely, leverage each other's support. And also, I'm sure this is part of this objective of Tech for Good Institute, how to include more people from different various segments of the industry to come together and then complement each other, work with the private and public sector, and then we can create the most synergies for the benefits that we could bring to the society.
And I'd like to, in a moment, sort of dig in a little bit more into your experiences in government relations and your role in that. Because as Klaus Schwab pointed out, and as Minister Teo elaborated on, the relationship between the government and the private sector in the development of this area is extraordinarily significant. We've got a whole host of interest areas: the digitalization of labor economies, the dynamics of the labor market, competition, security. All these elements on a policy level are absolutely key. But we'll come on to that in a minute. Let's get a little bit more into the micro element. And Tim, I want to come to you here if I could, because at MasterCard, platforms for you have been a way of life for quite some time. And the way that you have deployed and utilized them, I'd like to let you tell us a little bit about that. Not simply from the perspective of how you relate to governments, but tell us about how platform economies in the consumer sense and within the intra-company sense have played out for you.
Sure, Timur, and good morning to you all. Delighted to be with you from New York and to help grab on this very exciting day with the launch of the Tech for Good Institute. The timing is right, and the mission is critical, and it's a pleasure to be with you this morning. So as you said, MasterCard has run a platform business globally in payments now for over 50 years. It didn't start digital, but it is thoroughly digital now in every way. And I'm delighted to offer my perspective coming from that platform experience. And I think I want to suggest to you three things this morning. First, just a reminder of the extraordinary explosion in growth in digital and platform services around the world over the last 20 years. It's become so routine that it no longer surprises us, but it is worth noting. We took 40 years to get to 1 billion MasterCard cardholders. Facebook did it in 8. ByteDance and TikTok will do it in 3. And that fact alone, that small fact, talks to the accelerating growth in this space, which I think the Bain report that Florian shared earlier articulates very, very clearly. So I think that's the first point. If you ask what surprises me, given our long experience running a digital platform company, I think I would highlight two things that are relevant for our conversation this morning. The first is that the world is clearly divided. There is a Western model, there are Western competitors, and then there are a whole new set of, not new, but now, as you heard, 17 years at Alipay from Kerry, vast scale competitors in Asia. That alone, the fact of difference, I think is not surprising. But what is the extent to which the digital platform economy, the animal spirits of innovation now around the world are really happening in Asia. And those innovations are passing back into other economies in the West. If that's in payments, it's in issues like QR payments and facial payments. If it is in any kind of a digital solution, the idea of a super app model now being embraced in markets around the world, the combination of social and e-commerce. Asia is really where innovation is happening and where people are coming to learn. And I think that's very timely given for Grab, given the launch, makes the launch of the Tech for Good Institute such an important occasion. I think the last thing I would say is that, and this I think is critical, all of this growth, all of this scale development and change, in some respects, has happened despite the lack of adequate supportive policy. And therefore, and again, the Tech for Good Institute launch, I think, is so important here. One can only imagine what we can do together, what we can achieve together, if we work collaboratively on a series of supportive policies that can help drive the digital economy into the future. For example, it is still the case that the global trading regime is largely focused on goods, not services, on commodities and manufactured goods. And yet, the digital economy is fundamentally about trade and services. And if we can build a future trading regime in which these issues are acknowledged and recognized and trust is enabled and protected, and cross-border data flows are permitted with privacy protections and so on, the right kind of digital trade framework, such an urgent need in our world today, it could be such a powerful further accelerant of digital economies. We'd love to see that happen. And I'm hopeful that that's something that the Tech for Good Institute can help look at. Or issues of digital identity, a broken element of our global economy today, critically important for small businesses and consumers around the world to have access to digital identity solutions so they can get the benefits of the network effects of the digital economy. And yet we don't have good answers today. Here again, another critical policy issue that can be embraced and pushed forward to not only to secure the future of the digital economy, but to deliver more inclusive growth overall. So one of the most surprising things about all this growth is imagine what we can do with the right kind of supporting policies. And that's what the Tech for Good Institute will help look at.
Tim, thank you very much indeed. Growth is a key word, I think, in all of this. As the Bain report that we referenced earlier on, as Tan Hui Ling talked about earlier on, Southeast Asia is still well behind in terms of its engagement and the size of that market compared to China specifically. And hopefully that will come along. But let me give Sumit a chance to make some opening comments. And just follow on, if you would, from what Tim was saying, and tell us how you see the trajectory and the context of this conversation.
Thanks again for having me on the panel, and congratulations for the Tech for Good Institute. I think it's the right time and the right place to start up an institute like that to kind of, again, create this fostering relationship between the private sector, engage the policymakers, as Tim was kind of alluding to. I think there are lots of things that we have to think about. First is, we need to educate the policymakers what is the role of technology and how technology is actually an important driver of the future growth. To me, the two buzzwords I think about for the next 10 years from an academic point of view is technology, and the second is sustainability. At most of the times, we think these two things are at odds against each other. If you want to do technology, you will have to let go of sustainability or actually, whereas the way we should think about is how can we achieve sustainability through technology? And sustainability could mean many things. In this sense, it could be corporate social responsibility, how corporations are being encompassing, not only to their profitability, but to the customer needs, to their employee needs, and to the society in general. And I think the Institute would have that mission in mind, is to not only achieve the potential of technology, but through sustainability. Broadly, I feel like there is this tension that the governments or policymakers think of how technology is being used, and they always will look at the downside, which could easily be, what will happen to privacy? What will happen to data security? Inevitably, we will have data breaches. We will have these issues as long as we are working hard enough. Companies are working hard enough, one, to minimize these things, and two, to catch them or fix them as soon as these things happen. There is no company in the world, in my mind, which is a technology company, can sit here and say, we will not have breaches or data issues. It's just those guys whose brains think wrongly, they're always trying to manipulate or find ways to misuse the data that companies are collecting all over the world. So let me stop here, give it back to you, and I'm happy to discuss more on this.
Sumit, thanks very much indeed. And that's a good opening salvo of statements from our guest panel here on the context. And you can see from what they've said already that it's an extraordinarily complex context. We have so many themes running through this whole process, and we're not going to have time to talk about all of them. There are a few that I think we should focus on, principally the issue of government relations, policy making. How do we reconcile the policy-making imperatives versus the business imperatives, which often are put in conflict with each other, but I like to think of them more as a sort of a dynamic tension, where we have to work to make sure that each side gets what it wants for the benefit of the global commons. But before we go into policy, before we go into security, which is another aspect, just very quickly, Sumit, I just want to ask you to just pick up on a couple of the issues you just mentioned there, which actually have been less talked about so far, and that is inclusivity and sustainability. Now, while we sit here in Asia and talk about development and the well-being and the improvement of conditions for the population, it's going to be quite easy, isn't it, to slip into that old mode where we prioritize economic development at the expense of forgetting externalities. So just address that for me.
So I think this is an important issue. And Minister Teo brought this up about, thinking about the workers' rights, which is thinking about being inclusive, thinking about their retirement savings, health benefits, and so on and so forth. Wages, protecting their rights. I think this is key to any policymaker, and also companies. Companies do not want employees who will join them and leave them quickly. And the reason they leave them quickly is because their demands are not being met, which could be healthcare demands, which could be retirement policies. So companies, in their self-serving interest, will make sure that they provide them all the things that the employees need. I think the other thing that tech companies or companies like Grab and others are not emphasizing is they are giving opportunities to employees who otherwise would not have found jobs. I mean, it's just a fact. If you look around, there are lots of people, because of disabilities or shame, are not willing to go work in a company because they don't want to face another individual. Being self-employed through delivery services or driving, I think, gives them these opportunities, which is being inclusive. Now, this is clearly not emphasized by the tech companies. We are only talking about the inclusivity. We are not giving them minimum wage, or we are not providing them retirement security. I think this is something we should talk more about. The other part is about sustainability. I mean, can tech companies do more of sustainability? That, I think, is still an open question. I am not convinced that tech companies are doing enough towards making sure that technology is also being used for a sustainable environment. They are doing enough of corporate social responsibility. I mean, look at the launch of the Institute. But I think there is more to be done on that front.
That's a really important agenda, and I do hope that as the Institute grows and gets more into developing their content, this is something that we'll focus more on. But let's get into some of the other issues now. The complex environment that we mentioned, Dr. Bambang, a moment ago, you are more familiar with than most. You're dealing with almost 50 governments around Asia, and all of them are tackling the issues of digitalization, the issues of regulation, the issues of security, the cloud, all these kind of things. Just tell us a little bit about that complexity and how we can manage it. What are your tips for the Southeast Asia 6 as they begin to try and form those public-private partnerships and they navigate that dynamic situation?
Thank you, Timur. I think I will emphasize more on the government because my colleagues here are the expert of the private sector. And as we know, the pace of change and the fluidity of policy context have accelerated over the past few years. Now we know that digital transformation and innovation will enable change to be felt more widely and more deeply. And this requires government to be more agile in managing the policy and creating the right ecosystem for digital economy. This is not easy. We are entering an uncharted territory, unprecedented situation in which we have to strike the balance between so many interests of the stakeholders, for example. So again, going back to the government in such a context, to be more agile, government should be supported by a range of expertise, a good system, and also appropriate management tools. And such agile, evidence-based policymaking enables government to be able to respond quickly to change, for example, to test out different approaches and technology and to scale up a successful one. Let me just highlight a couple of examples on ADB rules. We, ADB, conduct many policy dialogues with our member countries. There are technical one, working level, and high level also. In the high level policy dialogue, for example, with a key official of our member countries, we got some feedback from them, and they underscored, for example, the importance, again, the word of inclusivity has always been there in the discussion, and also human capital development, as well as leveraging on technology when designing recovery strategies. So issues such as cybersecurity, digital literacy, digital financial literacy, consumer protection are common issues to be found across the any countries we have the dialogues. Yeah? And ADB also equip our policymaker with fresh and innovative approaches beyond the immediate responses to the pandemic. When we test a model, for example, when we try to create an ecosystem that is friendly to digital platform economy, we have emphasized the need to look not only short term, but also in the longer term. We should not be myopic with all that happening at the short term, but take a perspective of mid-term and long term. And of course, as a government, they have to take care more on the social protection, vulnerable groups, and other who may left behind in this new game. Yeah? And for agile policy making to happen, it also requires good and trusted data, We have been supporting our member countries, government and researchers by making data accessible and easy to use. We create some also knowledge platform. Timur also involved last week in our biggest knowledge platform in Asia and Pacific. And we have some knowledge sharing about experience and others among the member of government. We also supported government in improving their technology for startup ecosystem, which is an important driver for innovation. And for the private sector actors, we have our private sector arm. We hold hackathons, for example, to provide seeds fund through ADB Ventures for the startup companies, which have strong development impact in their operations. So lastly, as the multilateral development bank, we always concerned about the digital divide and possible widening inequality. That is our mandate. So we fund programs and perform research to address the digital divide, including areas like digital literacy, digital financial literacy, and platform governance. And we believe that education and good governance are important driver if you want to have sustainability of our economic growth based on this new kind of digital economy, and building skills, especially on digital skills, and also very familiarity with the digital financial literacy will enable the people to participate more in this new digital economy and reap the benefit of the new opportunities and new jobs that it creates. So I stop here.
Thank you very much.
Timur.
Kerry, from your perspective, what can the ASEAN 6 learn from the evolution of the platform economy in China, and specifically with respect to the interaction between policymakers and business?
Yeah, I think these days consumers are very sophisticated. Convenience, speed, seamlessness is something that they look for at the minimum as a user. So this consumer driving force inevitably will drive more innovation because there's more competition in the market. Everyone's trying to offer the best service to the consumers. And then I think inevitably, as more new entrants coming to the market, there will be more different standards, and which may lead to fragmentation. So from our perspective, I think harmonization, having something more streamlined in terms of regulatory framework as a region is more critical than ever. And then another aspect is how to set regional, international standard around core technology being deployed. It is also another area that should be looked into. So I think, policymakers definitely play a very critical role in the evolution of the industry, especially, with a lot of recent developments in China. Actually, as a player, we see all these very necessary, healthy adjustments because as the market develops to a certain size, then you need a framework to better regulate for more sustainable development down the road. But I do think, that aside, private sectors also play a very important role in the development. So, for example, we are actually leading a few efforts around the core tech standardization projects around what is the minimum security around QR code payments, given there's so many different types of technology in the market, and then what is the minimum standard around eKYC validation technology, which will help enhance onboarding, security, and risk fraud detection. So, there's definitely a place for a lot of these private sectors to come to help the government from a more practical perspective to make sure, while we have the framework, they are implementable, right? So how do we complement these, government efforts from a private sector perspective? And then also, I think one thing that MAS from Singapore government is doing quite well is they're very good at engaging the private sector. For example, they come up with a lot of innovative ideas about recent CBDC challenge to invite private sector to come and submit proposal how the CBDC infrastructure framework should look like. So I think, there's definitely, a lot of good efforts in this area, but I do encourage more technology company also to leverage a platform like Tech for Good Institute to step up and have all these more progressive conversation up front. So make sure we have an environment which is actually very welcoming and also balanced in the long-term development perspective.
Thank you, Kerry. Tim, Minister Teo spoke, she mentioned the phrase the global commons. And I was really happy to hear that because it's great to see the concept of the commons becoming part of the public discourse once again. But tell me about what happens when we try and create a commons mindset and bring together, as Klaus Schwab was talking about, this, what he called the third way of public-private interactions in a way that services the communities that we're talking about. Because these things are not always in line, and certainly our capitalist history has not put us in a situation where the global commons is the first thing we think about. But, if you look at cyberspace, surely if cyberspace is shared space, we do have to think of these ideas, don't we? So tell me how you, as a private corporation, think about navigating that public-private partnership potential.
Oh, that's such a great question. Look, I think collaboration between corporations and governments is simply essential. Klaus Schwab is absolutely right. Public-private partnerships is the third way. It is the only way forward in terms of addressing these inherent tensions. And the private sector, and why? Because government is sovereign and sets the direction, as it should. And private sector has the extraordinary capacity to innovate and to execute and to do it at scale in a way that government can't across all those three vectors. And so the combination, I think, is potentially very powerful. It's something we believe very strongly at MasterCard. We have a longstanding commitment to financial inclusion. We've committed to bring 1 billion people into the financial mainstream, and we're well on our way. And you mentioned cyberspace. Cyber is absolutely a commons. Too many people are only worried about putting locks on their windows and doors, and we need to work together to make the neighborhood and the cities that we live in safe, if you will, using that analogy in cyberspace. And we're investing there as well to help small businesses around the world. So every company has to be in this new era of stakeholder democracy, very much focused, I think, on these issues. But here, in my mind, is the most important thing. Every human institution when people come together, every human institution can produce extraordinary benefits, and they can also produce externalities. They can impose costs on society or on other groups in society. That's true of everything. It is particularly true of digital platforms because of their extraordinary capacity to scale. And so therefore, the most critical thing is for the leaders of digital platforms in Asia to be laser focused, yes, on the benefits and the strength and the growth that they can provide their societies, but also on the possibility of the externalities they can produce. And the professor just spoke beautifully about two. One is gig and employment of people going forward with stability, and the other is the environment and how do we create a more circular economy. These issues have to be grappled with. They have to be grappled with now, and leaders of digital platform businesses like MasterCard, like Grab, have to be prepared to engage and to make change in order to have sustainable pathways for the future. The alternative is what we're seeing in the United States, where candidly, I think one way to describe the last 10 years is that digital platform companies became very convinced that they were all about the upside and all about positive contributions, were insufficiently candid and focused on the downsides. And therefore, when they got to a very significant scale, we're seeing the backlash that's been discussed. Bottom line is, this is what the Tech for Good Institute can do: help land this plane in the right way so that we achieve the extraordinary upside benefits of platform businesses like Grab and produce more equitable and just societies going forward. It's why this work is so critical.
A challenging and detailed agenda, Tim. Thanks very much indeed. And I'm sure the Tech for Good Institute is going to be looking at that very closely. Let me give the last word here to Sumit. Sumit, as Dr. Bambang mentioned, he and I were involved last week in a 3-day event at the ADB about knowledge sharing, the idea of knowledge sharing and the collaborative context of being able to take what Tech for Good Institute does and push it out into the global environment. You're in the knowledge business. To just finish off with a few thoughts on how we can really bring that global commons into a meaningful and impactful kind of space.
I think this is very important. The Institute can engage with academics. I mean, academics, what we are good at is actually looking at data and understanding and looking for patterns that could educate the public, that could educate the industry, and it could educate the politicians and the policymakers. This is what we do routinely with research. I mean, I've been involved in looking at research on the tech industry or the sustainability industry. For instance, we just started an institute at NUS, which I will be heading, on sustainable and green finance. And our entire mission is to look at what are companies doing and how compatible they are towards sustainability and green. Now, what the institute here can do is not only collaborate with academics, but also make their data available for academics to routinely come in, obviously with protection and making sure their data privacy issues maintained, but for people to say, here is the data, this is what we are learning from it, this is what we can learn from Singapore or from Indonesia, and then we can take it away to other countries, okay? This is what we are learning about drivers' behaviors, or customers, how are customers? For instance, I just looked at another platform data from Singapore, and I found that during the pandemic, during the lockdown, consumers in Singapore were eating more fried food by 13%. Now, we just published that in a medical journal. Okay, we learned that by using data not from Grab, but another platform, and showing, because we could look item by item what they were eating. Now, that's important for policymakers. That's also important for the public-private sector, and for the customers, and for the healthcare sectors. So this is how I think the data availability, the ability for the institute to say, come on, researchers, tell us what we can learn from our own data.
Fantastic. Thank you very much to everyone on the panel, Sumit, Carrie, Tim, and Dr. Bambang, for your contributions and your thoughts. I hope you managed to hear us clearly. We've been sitting here with the masks and you can't see our faces. And I hope my glasses didn't fog up too much. But it's a challenging agenda, a fantastically interesting and important agenda. And I think we're all rooting for the Tech for Good Institute to really be able to deliver something unique and valuable in the Asian context. And I look forward to engaging with it further. Thank you all for being here and listening, and hope to see you again soon in this context.
Thank you very much. Once again, thank you to our panel for stimulating as well as thought-provoking discussion. Thank you. Please take your seats. Thank you. Wonderful ideas that were being shared. Inclusivity, sustainability, security of the digital economy. How do we interact with policy makers navigating that private-public partnership moving forward? Ladies and gentlemen, much food for thought. Well, we've come to the end of our program here today. I hope you've enjoyed yourselves. Now, before we go, I would love to take this opportunity to invite you to visit our Tech for Good Institute website. And as Ms. Tan Hui Ling mentioned earlier, you can download our inaugural report beginning from today. I believe it's online right now. So head on over, download the report, take a look. For audience joining us back home, thank you again for dialing in. Take care. Have a great rest of the week. For audience joining us here in the auditorium, may I please invite you to make your way to the exit sign. Our ushers will direct you out. Please do have your mask on throughout and keep a safe distance of 1 meter from each other. Thank you all once again for joining us. A big round of applause to the launch of the Tech for Good Institute.